Thank you. Right, thank you very much for listening so far. There's only 2 more to go, so just 10 minutes time and hopefully we'll be all done. Like Rosie just said, my name is Andrew. I'm a 3rd year sport development coaching student at Sheffield Hallam University. I was a Press Tribune team leader, so I had the pleasure of telling people like Josh what to do at London 2012 during the Paralympics and Olympic Games. I was working at Lord's Cricket Ground doing the archery and also the Royal Artillery Barracks doing the archery and shooting. My presentation is going to be about a post of what I did a couple of months ago as part of my university course, and thanks to Sarah and Rosie, they give me a great high mark and I can take that to my final mark. Just about media operations at London 2012 and also the Olympic and Paralympic Games. Media operations at London 2012 was one of 92 functional areas. A functional area can be one of waste, security, transport, and media operations was one of them. Media operations were spread over 5 different areas, so you've got main press centre where Sarah was based, you've got press services, photo operations, Olympic Paralympic News Service, OP&S, and also you've got venue operations, which was my area. Some stats at London 2012, some on your handouts down there, so I won't say them all, but across the both Paralympics and Olympics, you've got over 19,000 news stories produced, and thanks to Matt's 6 weeks internship, enabled over 6 million hits on Info Plus, and also 1.5 million hits on Info Plus during the Paralympics. So Matt did the pre-work, then it was up to the guys for the Olympic and Paralympic Games. And like we said this morning, the journalists and the written media is all about if you can look after them, because they write about the games. So in 8 months' time, everyone will be watching Sochi, including me. So fingers crossed, it's going to be all right. So what did LOCOG, London Organising Committee for the Olympic and Paralympic Games, do to ensure that the journalists could do their job? There was 32 press workrooms with more than 6,000 workspaces for the journalists to do their work. There was 54 press tribunes with around 15,000 seats. There was 48 mix zones with nearly 1,500 metres of space for the press to take flash quotes and photography, and also 36 media conference rooms holding at least 4,000 people. So I'm going to talk about during, before and after at Lord's Cricket Ground, as well as the Royal Artillery Barracks, during the before, during and after across both Olympic and Paralympic Games. If we look at the top left-hand corner, so you've got the before the games at the Lords, some positive news stories coming out of the games. Prior to day one, where the competition actually started, there were a prelim where all the top archers had to undergo some training, and during that there was a blind athlete, which is a picture at the bottom left hand corner of your sheet. He was actually blind and he got a world record, and he was actually technically blind, and that's during the Olympic Games, and he eventually, it's just at the bottom left hand corner, and eventually got silver during the Olympic Games. But also the British media, British press also like to identify some negative stories as well. They like to escalate negative stories. So going back to the top left hand corner, if you can. Because it was based at Lord's Cricket Ground. Lord's Cricket Ground, if you don't know, it's played by cricketers, and cricketers like their grass and nobody else is allowed to stand on it. So when you've got 7,000 seater stands going up, you've got TV crews, you've got workmen walking up and down on the pitch. the journalists, the written media, the tabloids, the press jumped on the bandwagon and said, what are you doing to our ground? What are you doing to this pitch? Because after 14 days after the Olympic Games finished, there was an international cricket game going on where the world's media would be watching yet again. That game didn't actually go ahead like it planned because there was still grass missing, but that was just because of the 7,000-seater stadiums. Moving over to the Royal Artillery Barracks with the Paralympics, the positive stories coming from it really was overrun by the negative stories. During the test event, you've got foxes roaming around, biting into electricity cables, biting into optical fibre for the internet, and they just basically cause havoc. So you've got well-trained local staff, you've got well-trained security guards shooing the foxes away where they should have been doing their other job, just because the foxes it's nearly home time. Just the foxes cause havoc for the LOCOG, and also during the event they had to close the main road down in Woolwich where that was closed. And the road was called Ha Ha Road, so it's a bit of humour, but the tabloids and the press decided to jump on the bandwagon and says it's not funny, even though it's called Ha Ha Road, it's going to cause so much havoc, it's going to cause so much distress for the people around London and the barracks itself. Going on to during the games now, so if you can just go down for me, thank you. During the games for the Olympic Games, positive stories, like I said earlier on, the blind Korean, registered blind, shooting an arrow 70 metres away, and he actually got a medal. And personally, I think that's incredible, because when I was there, if you hold your thumb up, that's the size of the thumbnail on your thumb, that's the size of the target. So for a technically blind person to shoot 70 metres away and get a silver medal, I think personally out of this world. But the negative stories yet again. There were quite a lot of security issues around the London Games. There were a private security firm, could not employ and recruit enough staff, so they had to bring quite a lot of extra police in and armed forces during the games, especially at Lord's. And there was a bit of an uproar because one of the armed forces staff had a dispute in between some of the volunteers or paid security guards, and that was overrun by the positive stories. So the British journalists were always going, you've done a good job with the Olympics, but yet you've got security guards can't deliver their job. If we compare to during the Paralympic Games, you've got the guy just on the right hand corner there. I don't know if you can see on your poster, but he's actually got no arms. And for an archer to shoot with arms, I think is practically key. But yeah, this guy actually got a medal, and I think if you put him in the Olympic Games, he would have got a medal as well. It was that good. And it was basically during the Paralympic Games, there was a culture shock for British public, saying the same athlete, they might have an impairment, no arm, no leg, but they're just different. All right, they're the same person but with a different ability, and that's the key, because the tagline for the Olympic Games was "Inspire a Generation," and you've got the torchbearers, like we've been saying today. If you can inspire a generation by watching the torchbearer or watching Mark Stutzman win a silver medal with no arms. And that's what was key during the Olympic and across Paralympic Games through the written media. But also there was some negative during the Paralympic Games. I can't remember, a couple of presentations ago. The Olympic press coverage was done by a company called BBC. Don't know if you've heard of them, one of the world leading broadcasters in the world. But unfortunately, the broadcast rights holder was Channel 4, which is a smaller company. Compared to the Olympic Games, where there was over 25 live dedicated Olympic channels, for the Olympic Games there was only 4, and 2 of them was online only for the Paralympic Games. And the Olympic and Paralympic Games was the first, I think it was the first games to be organised by the same organising committee, and I think that's going to be same in Sochi as well. And there was always saying, even though they're 2 events, we want them to make them 1 event. So, but having 2 different broadcast rights holders for the Olympic and Paralympic Games, the British journalist was always going to say, I don't think you did it because, like some of the quotes here, you can't match the lavish BBC for the Paralympics, admits the Channel 4 chief. Anger at the Channel 4 coverage. And moving on to after the Olympic Games. Positives coming from, apart from the miscommunication between some of the problems with the ticketing, which is the top left-hand corner, and also the security. Lords adapted really well to produce a high-quality event, and that was backed up in the media stories, because you've got high-profile cricketers saying, "I don't think you can do it," but watching the archery at Lord's Cricket Ground, I think you did a fantastic job, and that was backed up by some of the quotes. And the World Archery Federation actually went back to Lord's to present a bow to the museum at Lord's Cricket Ground. But some of the negatives, like I said earlier on, there were 14 days after the last arrow was shot, there was an international cricket game taking place, and as soon as the last arrow was finished, they said, fantastic event, but attention is turned to the cricket game, what's happening in 14 days' time. It did take place, but like I said earlier on, with big holes in the floor and in the grass. So after the Paralympic Games, even though it looks a bit, let's say, a child play centre with the bubbles and just the colour of it, it adapted really well. That those ranges are actually going to be used as part of the Glasgow 2014 Commonwealth Games, and also part of it's actually going to Rio for the Summer Olympics in 2016. So the London's really set a standard, and that was backed up by some of the quotes. Iconic shooting venue. As the structures were only temporary, this will be a detrimental effect after the Paralympic Games by the London 2014 Commonwealth Games. But after the Paralympic Games, like I said earlier on, it was done by the same Paralympic and organising committee. But the journalists have said already, you turn on the TV in England and said, where's the Paralympic legacy? Inspire a generation. And that's what the journalists are going after now at the moment, because you've got the Paralympics legacy questioned. As the Paralympic flames spluttered out, and that's been overrun by, you did a fantastic job, like I said earlier on. The athletes was the same people, but just with a different ability. But that's been overrun by, as it spluttered out with the legacy. So, in contrast and in conclusion, I don't think you ever can please the journalist and the written media, like we said earlier on. they've got a deadline to meet, even though they was working in London, the other side of the world. In Australia, if there was an Australian shooter, archer, who was shooting, the other side of the world is generally 12 hours away. So when we're waking up at 8 o'clock, Australia's going to sleep. So they've got deadlines to meet. So it was my job. There was over 9 other volunteers to make sure that the journalists could do their job. So I don't think you can actually please the journalists all the time. But it's up to you guys now to see if you can actually please the journalists, because in 8 months' time the world will be watching, as well as the guys here who's already been there, done it. So we'll see if we can replicate what was done in London to Sochi in 8 months' time. And thank you. You got any questions?
Well done. Any questions? Oh, yeah.
Yes, I have a question. I've heard this expression that if there is ink, where there is ink, there is drink. So my question is, did journalists drink a lot during the games, or did they show up on the scene and not being able to hold a pen or things like that? So
well, come to question it, when they turn up for work on a Monday morning, when they couldn't sit on the chair, I can draw a contrast. No, because we turned up for our work, went home. We didn't really have much communication between the journalists, because the journalists sat down, did their stuff, and as long as they're happy, you give them the information. You don't really talk to them, because they can be quite grumpy and moody. So if anyone's working in press operations, just as long as they're happy, don't interrupt them.
Just a number of bars at the press centre there, so where I work, I saw a lot of them when they went to your venue.
Is that where you were?
Yeah, I wasn't allowed to, but they were. Yeah.